Grace is a saving place. Find salvation, peace, restoration right here on Sundays with Pastor Craig High.
He promises the grace of Christ in every situation.
Here on WRCX, Channel 40. Find refuge, find strength, and find peace. Bethesda Temple, the home of grace.
You make the top of his most wanted list. This second letter in Revelation was addressed to the angel of the church in Smyrna. The city of Smyrna was one of the most beautiful cities in the Roman province of Asia. It was called the crown of Ionia and the ornament of Asia. Smyrna was actually a very wealthy city. But like all wealthy cities, it showed the extremes of wealth and poverty side by side. Now, it would have been among the poor folk that the church would be found. You see, their worship of Jesus contributed to their poverty and to their troubles. It was a beautiful city, but it had an ugly soul. Smyrna hated the church. It hated the church because it was a haven for the Jews. And of course, they hated anything that had any connection with Jesus. A student of the Apostle John, a man by the name of Polycarp, was bishop of the church at Smyrna. The Jews put him to death. They executed him. It was not Rome that persecuted the church at Smyrna. It was the Jews, folk who served the same God. Are you with me? It's a shame when you have haters who serve the same God that you serve. When we should be loving one another because at least we have God as our common ground, as our common denominator, we find ourselves hating on one another. What a paradox that among the people of God, there should be haters. There was something very special about the church at Smyrna. Of the 7 churches that received letters from John, letters that Jesus himself dictated to John, there were only 2 who received no rebuke or complaint from the Lord. Smyrna was one of them. As we consider the words of this letter, we see absolutely no censure. The church at Smyrna seems to be the nearest of all to the ideal church, the one that is without blemish, the one that has neither spot nor wrinkle nor any such thing. Here was a church that was busy being a church rather than just playing church. Here was a church where the love for God and the love for man alike were still preeminent. Here was a church that held fast to the true doctrine of Christ. It remained faithful in its worship and in its service to God. Smyrna was a church awaiting its coming Lord with a fervent hope. It was a church that was still on fire for the Lord. I wonder if I have anybody here who's still on fire for the Lord. Still have a little fire burning down on the inside. To this church, Jesus instructed John to write, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. To Smyrna, Jesus says, I know. Those are words of understanding, words of empathy. He didn't say, I see. That's what an observer would say. I see you. I see what you're doing. No, Jesus says, I know. Other people see, but I know. Other people think, but I know. Other people try to interpret your words and your deeds, but I know them. Others assume, but I know. Jesus says, I know how hard you work. I know the trouble you face. I know the blasphemy you have to deal with. Jesus knew these things intimately because he had to endure the same kind of things. He had to face the same kind of hatred. He had to stare down the same enemy. But listen to his assessment of the whole matter. And mind you, it is not found in this letter. It is found in John 16, verse number 33. Jesus says, these things have I spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace. In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. What he was saying is, if I overcame, you can overcome. So even when you are having tribulation, he says, be of good cheer. So I'm wondering today, where are the cheerful folk? Notice, he didn't say, be of good cheer. It's time out for being crybabies. Nor did he say, be of good fear. It's time to stop acting like chickens and stand up. Jesus said, be of good cheer. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Now, when you hear rejoice in the Lord always, that includes the times when you're going through something. I wonder if there's anybody here who can praise God in the midst of your test, the midst of your trial, the midst of your trouble, who can say, as David said, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually